Hey guys, it's Julian McKenzie here of the Chris Johnston Show, letting you know that the SDPN will be participating in the Get Real Virtual 5K fundraiser to support Rainbow Railroad. Rainbow Railroad is a Canadian charitable organization that helps lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer individuals escape violence and persecution in their home countries. So your donations will create a maximum amount of impact for queer folks globally. On Friday, June 27th, we encourage you to go out and run, walk, or ride on anything that has wheels. Bikes, skateboards, scooters, rollerblades, skates, you name it. You could even push a stroller. Get creative and keep it accessible to you. You can even connect with other participants around the world by sharing a photo of yourself with the hashtag GetReal5K or Rainbow Road 5K, and great posts may be shared by Get Real on social media. If you want to contribute to either the SDPN page or Steve Dangle's own personal donation page, the links are in the description. Our team fundraising goal is $4,000, and we need your help to get there. Links in the description, and we hope you're able to support us as we do the Get Real Virtual 5K fundraiser. Thanks so much.
The Chris Johnston Show.
Let's go!
Your number one destination for a behind-the-scenes look at the game of hockey.
Is this thing on?
Here's NHL insider Chris Johnston and host Julian McKenzie.
CJ, we've been spoiled in this year's Stanley Cup final. For the first time since 2014, consecutive overtime games to start a cup final. They've been amazing games. What have been your impressions 2 games into this year's cup final?
Well, why not just make it 3 overtime games in a row to start? Maybe we'll get that Monday night. If it happened, it would only be the second time in cup final history since 1951. So, it's been awesome to both have a lot of goals, which I just think, I can appreciate a 2-1 game too every now and then. But there's something a little more exciting when you see a first period like we had in game 2 and the teams are going back and forth. I mean, you've had 4 lead changes already in those 2 games. Obviously, lead changes in hockey, they're not that common, really, because there aren't that many goals scored. So when you're getting that sort of tension, it's awesome. And then, double overtime game 2 and a long overtime in game 1. I mean, while the fans at home may not appreciate all the extra 2-day breaks between games because you like just getting in a rhythm, you're watching a game every night, I'm sure the players didn't mind. Guys like Connor McDavid, I think he played 66 minutes, if I'm not mistaken, between 2 games, like basically the equivalent of 3 games for what would be normal output for him through 2. And, obviously these are games played at breathtaking speed at, a high level of intensity. So, yeah, it was quite a start to the series in Edmonton. I think it lived up to the hype. I'm on the camp that it's kind of cool to have a rematch. It's not going to happen all that commonly, I don't think. And over time, it's just so hard for 2 teams to get back the next year. And so given that my expectations were already up here when it started, they probably exceeded them through 2 games. And now, you just hope that it can continue, that the coaches don't get their teeth into everyone and give us a bunch of 1-0 games down the stretch. But let's face it, it's probably going to tighten up a little bit as the series goes along. And maybe 1 or 2 of these games will end in regulation too.
I hope that we get more of the same in 1 and 2, but you're right.
I should say defense. This because I want to rewind it. But do you remember my prediction for the series?
I don't know why it's not coming to my head right away.
It was did you say? Edmonton in Game 7, double overtime.
Yes, so you did. You did say that.
Given how it started, I'm just saying that seems very much in play. That seems like it's an oddly specific prediction, but that's very much in play.
Oh yeah, like I said, I'm rooting for chaos. We are the founding members of Team Chaos on the CJ Show. Give me that. Speaking of chaos, you know what? I won't even call it chaos. We'll just call it magisterial brilliance. Right in front of me, I have the Connor McDavid assist where he blows by Alexander Barkov and Aaron Ekblad before dishing it off to Draisaitl. Like it's just it's beautiful. It's perfect. Where does that play rank among some of Connor McDavid's most brilliant plays?
Well, I was talking to someone in the press box the night who covers Connor McDavid, and he's like, yeah, that's probably like top 30 things I've seen him do. And
no, that's not top 30.
But here's the thing. I think a play like that, it gets elevated in the pantheon, even if he's pulled off higher degree of difficulty moves in a December game. I think because it's the Stanley Cup final, it's way more likely to be, first of all, just going to be a replay that's shown more often, I think. I had my nephew in our family group chat was mimicking it in his living room, and I'm sure he's not alone among young kids around the continent who, got a chance to see that. And that's kind of like what makes something like the Stanley Cup final or the big game moments so cool, is because they just get more people's attention. And so, I am admittedly not qualified to put perspective on McDavid's. Like, I just haven't, it's hard for me to conjure up all the moments. Like, I remember when he went like 1-on-4 on the Rangers that time. That was a few years ago now. I mean, the guy just does so much at such a high rate of speed all the time. Like, remember the goal against Dallas, not this year, but last year in the Western Conference final, game 5, when they eliminated them. That was pretty ridiculous. I'll say this, what I appreciate about the move, in addition to just sort of its audacity, is it's all in one fluid motion. Like, if you look at when he brings the puck back through, basically brings it back into the middle, around Ekblad's stick check. And then, like, in one fluid motion, it's like onto Draisaitl's stick. Like, it's artistic. That's hockey art, right? Like, that's, and what, I guess maybe, I don't know if it gets diminished at all that Edmonton doesn't win that game, but that was a go-ahead goal in the moment. And, even having Draisaitl scoring, last year we got to the Cup final, Draisaitl wasn't healthy, didn't manage to score a goal in those 7 games. He's got 3 already through 2. I mean, this series has had a little bit of everything. If you want to pull at like the McDavid artistry, if you want to pull at, like Draisaitl and Sam Bennett, who's obviously leading the playoffs in scoring, Sam Bennett's got 3 goals. If you want to get into Brad Marchand, old man Brad Marchand had 2 goals, including an overtime winner on a breakaway. And then even Corey Perry, the slightly older man, Corey Perry, tied that game up with 18 seconds left. Like, it's been pretty spectacular from a storyline and drama standpoint, this series. And, I actually don't think we could ask for much more. I mean, I guess we could have dueling hat tricks or something like, Reinhardt and McDavid or something. If but other than, because I'm trying to think of in the last 20 years, what's made some games pretty epic. I mean, it's usually an overtime game. We've had 2 of those. It's usually the Stars doing lots of stuff. And even some of the kind of interesting, we'll call them role players, although I think Marchand's been even a bit more than a role player on the Panthers this playoff run. It just feels like it has everything so far. And even a little whiff of controversy, right? We had that goalie challenge in the first game and the goaltender interference challenge. And so let's bring it on. I'm down here in Florida now, so we've endured some travel hiccups, and I'm ready to go again for game 3.
What travel hiccups? So you want to go in on the travel hiccups you endured on your way to Florida?
On the scale of travel hiccups, I'd say they were like first world travel hiccups. But I was flying to Fort Lauderdale through Toronto on Saturday, the day after the game. And my flight out of Edmonton got delayed and delayed and delayed. It ended up being delayed like 7 hours. And so I missed the connection to Fort Lauderdale that day. But I did manage, albeit late, did manage to get back to Toronto where I live. So if you're going to miss a connection, I'd say missing it in your own city is an upside. So I didn't get home till like 1 a.m. that night, but I did actually get a bonus night in my own bed. Got a chance to freshen out some laundry, have a bit of a sleep in my own abode, and then made my way down to Florida on Sunday. So, I mean, if something's going to go wrong, that's about as right as it can go while going wrong. But it's long. Like, there is no way around it. Like, I was thinking, today's June 9th. If this series goes to game 7, it's June 20th. There's a lot of flights in the next 11 days if it ends up going 7, which, let's face it, I will not be complaining about if it happens. I mentally steeled myself for this to be a busy month of travel and, kind of working on a fly in an airplane, crammed in an airplane seat writing like this. But,
oh my God.
Yeah.
The ergonomics. The ergonomics of that, just, your
my
back.
posture. And I had a middle seat down yesterday because I was on a flight I wasn't originally supposed to be on because of the travel hiccups. So it was the gentleman beside me slept on my arm a little bit.
Oh,
he was a nice guy though, so I didn't. So we actually chatted a little bit, which I'm not necessarily inclined to do all the time. But
did he know who you were?
No, I don't think so. He just was a friendly guy.
Okay. I don't know. Sometimes you end up sitting next to a fan. Sometimes you end up sitting next to some dad or some junior hockey coach.
On flies, yeah. And on flights like this, let's face it, it's a lot of people doing the same thing. They're either fans coming down to the game or, other media members. Anyway, my point, it's kind of, they always feel a little bit like friends and family flights, even though they're not officially that. You know who was on my flight yesterday, though, was Larry Walker. And he had spent the weekend at the Canadian Baseball Hall of Fame inductions in St. Mary's, Ontario, and lives down here in Florida now. And then he was pretty excited because the Stanley Cup was on our flight along with Phil Pritchard. And so if you check out Larry Walker's Twitter feed, he actually tweeted a picture of himself in the airport with the Stanley Cup. And I was part of that mix of people, that gaggle.
Yeah, Montreal Expos legend Larry Walker. Love the fact that we got a mention of him. I wanted to get back real. I had to. I'm glad we mentioned him. I wanted to get back to Perry and Marchand. I did want to talk about them because it's one thing for them to score a goal here and there. They have been both incredible for their teams this postseason. What do you make of the old guys getting it done in this Stanley Cup final and throughout the playoffs?
Well, it's hilarious because Marchand scored first in the game to pull into the lead among active players among Cup final goals. Then Perry scores that tying goal to pull back into a tie with him. And then Marchand inched ahead. So Brad Marchand's up to 10 goals in his career in the Stanley Cup final. Even that just underlines it. Obviously in his case, this is his fourth final. What's kind of cool about it is that I kind of wonder if old guys are having a moment. And I say this with love and reverence. So both those guys are younger than me. So I'm not, I'm wondering quite seriously though, if teams are watching this, because let's face it, it is a league that is getting forever younger. And I'm not saying there's going to be a hard pivot into 40-year-olds getting massive contracts, but I do wonder if these guys might help reshape some views on, what winning hockey looks like. I mean, the Oilers, frankly, are an old team. They have depth and veteran players everywhere in their lineup. Jake Wallman's probably one of their young guys, right? And he's not young in the, he's on his third team in the NHL. It's not like he's a brand new player or anything. And so they're both really effective. At the end of the day, Brad Marchand is on the Panthers' third line, but he's, their top scorer. In terms of points, or second, I think, maybe to Bennett actually, but still, he's among their top scorers. He scored I will say this, he scored their two biggest goals in the playoffs, both in overtime. The goal against the Maple Leafs to keep it from going down 0-3 in Game 3, and then the goal in the last game to tie the series up. So, he's incredibly effective and an important member of their team. Perry, with the absence of Zach Hyman, has been playing a lot of shifts up on the top line and then scores that goal. And you look throughout this season, he had 19 goals in the regular season. He scored a bunch of big goals in the playoffs. His game at this point is, a former Rocket Richard Trophy winner. But you're not actually expecting him to count a lot of goals for Edmonton. But, I think he's got another year or two in him anyway, Corey Perry. So, I think that there's something to be said for knowing how to play the game, for how competitive in particular these two guys remain, which I think is a part of what's driven them to still find a way to be effective and fight and claw for a spot this year. I'll tell you this, Corey Perry is playing his 100th game of the season in Game 3. Edmonton will be playing their 101st. He missed one game during the year, so he's at 99 entering Game 3. And, everyone knows the story by now. He's in his fifth final in 6 years. So I haven't gone back and done all the math, but he's playing basically 100 games a year for the last half a decade. It's pretty interesting. And so I just wonder if playoff hockey opens the door for some teams, not not maybe viewing age a little differently with certain players in their roster. As I said, I don't think it's going to revert back to like 1993 hockey where like a young guy in the league was 28. Just because we've seen, frankly, 28's an old guy in the NHL on a lot of teams nowadays. If you look at the average age of rosters, many of them come in under age 28. But these two teams have some veterans, and the Oilers in particular. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but just go through their roster. Like it just feels like 30 is the new 20 on the Oilers roster.
I mean, doesn't that speak more to just Perry's an elite player. Marchand's been an elite player for quite some time. I see where you're going with this. Absolutely. I think it just speaks more to the fact that these are just two really good, outstanding players. I mean, hey, if Joe Pavelski wants to come back into the league and he feels he's healthy enough, he could he would fit in that category of an elite player at his age. But I mean, I also could totally see a GM somewhere just saying, you know what? I'm going to believe in them old guys. And then you sign someone who's maybe not quite at the level of those two.
Well, look, there's risk with signings, and the risk goes up with an older player because there's more miles there. And there's just, I think, more opportunity potentially for injuries or other things to happen. Plus, the league has rules about signing players to multi-year deals over age 35, where there's no way out of the cap hit if injuries come along. So, don't get me wrong. I'm not predicting a run on the old guys. I mean, I am available if anyone wants to call. But I'm a free agent this summer. But I'm actually not. I'm locked up. But I'm just saying that I do wonder if that's like part of the takeaway, though, is maybe a reopening of the minds to the possibility that you can get with players with some experience is really all I'm getting at. Because, there's something to be said, like the games we've seen that I've enjoyed, and not everybody likes this fact, but it's a different looking game than what you see on Tuesdays in November. It just is a fact. Like it's hockey has variations or different sort of viewpoints of what it looks like. And there's something different about playoff hockey. And I think it allows guys like that to excel. And then you make the smart point, and that's just, they've been really good for a long time and are very physically in a good spot. And obviously there's a level of desire there. Like, I'm watching that game too, and looking behind me, and there's Ryan Getzlaf up in the press box. He's working for Department of Player Safety and on the ground at the Cup final. And, he's a couple of years retired now, moving into, he's doing work with Hockey Canada. He's got the job with the NHL. And, there's Corey Perry down there scoring that goal. Like, it was just a funny juxtaposition given that they entered the league together, won Stanley Cup together back in 2007. That was a long time ago, man. I'm just saying, 18 years later, we're here and Perry's got a chance to win the thing again. Like, it's actually kind of crazy when you put your mind around it. And Brad Marchand, and we've touched on this a little bit, like he's about to be one of the better paid free agents, at least since I think in terms of AAV of this upcoming free agent class. So, there's opportunity out there for the odds, late 30s, early 40s guy. And we got two of them this series going back and forth. I love it.
If you were actually a free agent this summer, you dusted your skates off after scoring 3 goals in 21 seconds long ago, and you were open to a PTO with any team, all 32 teams are offering you a PTO. Who are you picking?
I mean, maybe I gotta go to a no tax state. That seems to be all the rage. Even Big Buddy CJ would rather go there. That's funny. I love that answer. Say this, and the one thing that isn't coming up nearly enough is the fact that players that live in Canada make 30% more because they get paid in American dollars. So yes, the tax rates are higher, but especially if you're a Canadian, like I'll just grab a name, Chris Tanev coming back to play in Toronto as free agent last summer. Like he's getting paid in US dollars, but I don't know his exact situation, but I assume living in Canada most of the year, if not all the year anyway. And, not to harp on it, but anyone who's been traveling back and forth across the border will know right now the Canadian dollar isn't particularly strong as it relates to the US dollar. So anyway, there are other counterpoints to that tax conversation that I don't think we need to hash out again, but I think it's gone too far in the other direction. You know what I mean? Like it's become this whole taking on a life of its own almost.
Yes, it absolutely has. Before we move on, give me a look ahead to Game 3. What are you looking forward to? What do you expect from that game? Anything else we should know ahead of Game 3 on Monday night?
Well, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins being questionable for the game, even if he plays, you start to get into some depth challenges there for Edmonton because they're obviously missing Zach Hyman already from their top six. But let's face it, McDavid, we talked about his assists. I did mention he's got 5 assists through 2 games. You want to know that Connor McDavid, among players that have been in multiple Stanley Cup finals, his goals or his points per game average is second all time. Mario Lemieux is 1, Connor McDavid is 2, and Wayne Gretzky is 3, if you look at history. So, even though last year's final maybe didn't go the way he wanted in terms of the team result, and he didn't get a point in Game 7, but he still had 11 points in a 7-game series, and now he's got 5 in 2 games to start this one. So he's at 16 points in his career. You look at the guys ahead of him, like his next point, he moves back past Patrick Kane in terms of Stanley Cup final points. 2 points, I believe he ties Evgeny Malkin, 3 from Lemieux and 4 from Crosby. Like, I think it's very conceivable. This series has at least 3 more games in it and probably 4 or 5, but we'll see. Like he's probably going to get 4 or 5 more points. I mean, he might get them in 1 game for all we know. And my point is when this final's done, he's probably going to have more Stanley Cup final points than Crosby, Malkin, Kane, Mario Lemieux, and a whole bunch of other really good players and guys that have played more, not in Lemieux's case, but a lot of the other ones there I mentioned played in at least 3 or 4 finals. So, anyway, the guy, I think it's important when you're watching greatness to try to appreciate it in real time and try to contextualize it. Do you know what I mean? Because it is hard. Mm-hmm. It just seems so normal, right? Like you watch him play and like, yeah, you got 3 assists in that game. That's normal, but it's not actually really normal. Some of the things he's done. So anyway, I think for me, I'll be watching, how Edmonton handles coming, it's a venue change, right? It's a matchup change potential for Paul Maurice. One thing that I didn't see a lot of discussion about, but the Barkov line had some challenges defensively in the last game. So I'll be curious to see one thing Paul Maurice did in the second round against Toronto is Toronto was also having success against the Barkov line. And so he switched Lundell to the Matthews line and things started to turn when that happened in a good way for Florida. So I wonder maybe Lundell gets the call up to get some McDavid shifts. I'm not sure how that's all going to go, but so I'm kind of curious because with the venue change, you get a little change to the dynamic that the coaches can bring to the ice. So I'm curious to see how Barkov responds from a rare game where he was -3, and B, how does this coach respond to that piece of information and some of those plays on the ice, and does he look for other ways to deploy his lineup to ensure success? So I'm just I feel like this is the last game of the series where you sort of don't know where you're going to get because it's different. And I'm just waiting for overtime, buddy, because we know we're getting a 3rd straight overtime.
Yes, Team Chaos reigns supreme. 2 things just to go back on your points here.
July. I've just made the mental, like, I'm not going to complain. I'm not going to, there was a bunch of reporters, and I wasn't one of them, but there's a bunch of reporters that after Game 2 were supposed to fly out on red eyes flights. Well, because the games are beginning at like 6:20 local in Edmonton PM. So there's an opportunity there. But then when that game went to double overtime, they all had their own flight chaos imposed by that. So my point is I'm just embracing the idea that I will sleep when the series is over, and I'm just going to enjoy every damn minute in the meantime.
Man, no one deserves more sleep than you, sir. I was just going to say, like, just you reeling off the stats of 97 in the Stanley Cup final and him matching all of these iconic players that have come before him. It is not hyperbolic to say he has already established himself as one of the greatest Stanley Cup final performers to ever play in the game. And this is only his 2nd time in a cup final. That is absolutely insane for Connor McDavid. And the only other thing I was going to say was that Alexander Barkov, I hope he's not hurt, because the fact that, he's still, his statistics are still really great. Like, we were just talking about the other day about him having the Selke after a good regular season, but very interesting to see how things have been for him on the defensive side with the Panthers.
Yeah, and look, he eats tough matchups for breakfast, but he's getting tough matchups, and as I said, like maybe there's a world that Lundell gets that, but then that's also a lot to put on him. But if that's what happens, it just shows you how valuable that, because that's the third line, right? Lundell, Luosterainen, and Marchand. It just shows you how valuable that line has been. This Panthers team is better than the one last year. I'm convinced of that. Now, they might be also more injured. Like you bring up the injury specter. Like it's possible that they've got here. And we know too, for example, Reinhart and Tkachuk both have not skated whenever it's been a full team skate in this series. Mm-hmm. So it's usually I don't think it's because they want to put their feet up. It's probably because they're saving whatever bit of energy or not wanting to push their body in whatever way it's challenging them any more than they have to beyond the games. So you have those two issues, and then it's entirely possible. Like I'll say it's one of the challenges when you get to this moment, because these games matter so much, right? So like someone might be out there ready to write some hot take like Barkov -3 almost cost his team the game, and then the next day it's like, oh, they come out and Barkov played with collapsed lung, and like that actually happened in a Stanley Cup final, right? With Patrice Bergeron, played with a collapsed lung. So the point is it's hard to be too critical, because there's always, you just know that when these teams get to their own sort of breakdown days and they're talking about all this stuff, that there's just going to be a long list of players that are in tough shape that are just battling through because they want to lift that silver trophy as bad as Larry Walker.
Absolutely. We look
they
forward
didn't let
to
him lift
more
it, by the way. You're not allowed to lift it if you didn't win it.
That's true. That is very true.
He posed beside it. If you notice the photo, he'll pose beside it.
Yes. We look forward to more of your coverage of the Cup final at The Athletic. This is a good transition over to our next topic here. This is our first pod since Pete DeBoer was fired in Dallas. We know about how that series ended for him and the Stars in the Western Conference Final, brought them to the Western Conference Final in his 3 years in charge, and it's over after a dismal showing in Game 5 and Jake Ottinger getting pulled after 2 goals on 2 shots, and that was pretty awkward. What do you make of Pete DeBoer being let go?
It just felt like at the end he forced their hand to a degree, I think, with some of the comments he made publicly, with where the players were at when management had a chance to go through some exit meetings after that season. And it kind of illustrates just how tenuous those coaching jobs are. Makes me almost think, like, how the hell has John Cooper managed? Like, obviously Tampa's had so much success, but how has he managed to like keep it fresh enough and keep coming back every year and not finding him in the spot for like 12 seasons? When someone like Pete DeBoer, 3 years and out, and it's 3 years where you got within a whisper of at least getting to a Cup final and had all kinds of regular season success during those years too. But yeah, I mean, it's some coaches have a shelf life. It feels to me like, first of all, he'll be out of work probably about as long as he wants to be. Certainly any team that has stumbles early next season will be calling Pete DeBoer first, I would think, among the available options, at least the ones that we know of today. And he's still at an age, mid-50s, where I fully expect to see him back behind a bench. And you look at his track record of success, like literally helped take the Devils to the Cup final, took the Sharks to a Cup final, took Vegas to multiple conference finals, and then the Stars to multiple conference finals. He also had a stop in Florida at the very start of his NHL coaching career. But I mean, you have that pattern of success. I mean, it actually, another guy who's unemployed, it's a little bit like what Peter Laviolette's career looks like. I mean, he had Nashville and Philly in Cup finals, and he's had a lot of success over the years. Carolina obviously had a lot of stops too, but so there's actually 2 veteran options out there for teams that maybe get into a jackpot to start of next season. But yeah, I mean, and honestly, with a little more reflection, it just felt like time for DeBoer. It just wasn't, he pushed a lot of buttons there. He obviously, I don't think the pulling of Ottinger in Game 5 was what sealed it. It's probably some of the messaging around it and, just the frustration that it built up. I mean, when your team doesn't win and when you're expected to win, it's a reminder how much pressure there is and how success is measured differently in different markets, right? Like you covered a team this year in Ottawa, and I'm not making any light of it, but that was viewed as a successful season. They found their way through it all. They found their way back to the playoffs. They kept the series very close against Toronto. Could have been longer, maybe could have been even in their favor. And so that's seen as a win in one market because it had been a long time coming in Ottawa. The Stars basically sleptwalked to the playoffs, got through a hell of a tough Colorado team in Game 7, got through the President's Trophy winners, fell flat against the Oilers, and it's viewed as a disappointment. So, tough league, man. It's just a tough league. It's hard to conclude anything other than that for me.
Who replaces Pete DeBoer in Dallas?
This is what's interesting is I think that they're looking for someone maybe to grow with the team. So less of a maybe hired hand, experienced coach, so someone like Peter Laviolette, I don't actually see as a fit for what Dallas is looking for. And so, they're going to look at internal candidates like Elan Nesreddine, who ran their PK this year and, did have a brief time, I believe, coaching in New Jersey as an interim coach, but, hasn't had certainly a long runway as an NHL head coach. Neil Graham just took their AHL team to the Western Conference final. They were beat out by Abbotsford, but, had a good playoff run, and I know has some fans in the organization. So, he's going to get a look. An interesting name for me is Glenn Gulutzan, who I actually think probably is overdue for an opportunity. He did coach in Dallas many years ago, coached in Calgary, but he's been with the Oilers now for a number of seasons, in charge of their power play. And, obviously he's got a lot of weapons at his disposal, but they've had a historically good power play during that time. And if you talk to the players that are on that unit, I mean, they just have a lot of appreciation for what they get from Glenn and wouldn't be surprised to see him, frankly, get another opportunity. I wonder if the fact that he's been, coaching into the Cup final the last couple of years has hurt his ability to get in on the jobs, because there's been there's a lot of replacements last offseason. I think we had 9 head coaching changes this offseason. But he's still working, right? And I know sometimes like there can be, I think that's in those circumstances, you'd maybe do like a little bit of an interview while your team's still playing, but it's just not the same, right? And I don't know how this is so normalized in the NFL, but it is. Like every year it feels like the NFL. It's like so-and-so coordinator is interviewing in this city like the week before the Super Bowl. So it happens in the NFL. It seems a little more, maybe it's just because it's one game a week, which is obviously difficult on the players' bodies, but there's more time between games for coaches to do things like interview elsewhere. Whereas when you're in a playoff series with a team, it's like all hands on deck every day. Anyway, that's a long way of saying, I wonder if that's like, I know Columbus had an interest in Gulutzan last year. I think Chicago, sniffed around him before hiring Jeff Blashill this year. Sometimes a team can't wait, right? Because they don't know what they don't know, and they can't just sit there for 2 months while you're in the busy in the playoffs. So it's a long way of saying don't be surprised if he gets back in there. I think Jay Woodcroft would make sense too. Obviously it's been a tough time for him because all this Oilers success has come immediately after he was fired. Remember last November, and he's now most way through 2 busy hiring periods where he, certainly had lots of interviews, but didn't end up getting a job as a head coach again. So, I think that's probably those are the names to look at there. There might be 1 or 2 others that get in the mix, but, the Stars, I definitely want to go, if not younger in terms of age, I think just they want to be open-minded about the experience and background of the person they hire. And it doesn't necessarily have, they're not bringing in a superstar closer from the bullpen necessarily, that maybe there can be someone out there that they can identify that can grow with their group and be there, a long while. It's kind of like what they did with Jim Montgomery, if you remember. Now, there's extenuating circumstances that ended his time in Dallas, but he came from the NCAA into the Stars and obviously has become a super well-respected coach onto his 3rd team now in St. Louis as a head coach. And I think they're looking to kind of replicate that model. Again, not necessarily with an NCAA coach, but someone who's maybe a little less of a proven commodity as an NHL head coach.
Jim Montgomery, fourth in Jack Adams voting, by the way. I don't know why that was a very random thing for me to bring up, but we all know about Spencer Carberry winning the award over the weekend. But Jim Montgomery, fourth. I mean, just made me think of the coaching jobs from some of the guys in that top 4, top 5 for the Jack Adams this year. Like, you could make a case for legit all of them, but Spencer Carberry, I think going away was going to be the winner. But like, yeah, it just, you mentioning Jim Montgomery made me think of that.
I tweeted out the list. There's just like the results the league released from the Jack Adams Award, like everybody who got a vote. And Garrett Hole, I don't know if you know Garrett, he retweeted it and put like PDO, like first, like every coach's PDO. Because basically sometimes hot goaltending or hot shooting percentage seasons do inflate how the coach is viewed. You know, quite often, frankly, the coaches that coach the best teams in the league, you know, and I'm certainly not knocking the choice of Spencer Carberry in this case. I think he's an excellent coach. And obviously Washington had a fantastic season, but it just feels like sometimes like the Pete DeBoers, who's probably a bad example in this case, but they don't really get votes, right? John Cooper doesn't get many votes at this point. All he does is just get to keep his job for much longer than anybody else and win more games than everybody else. But you get to a certain point and you're not even in consideration. It's more like the guy who surprised or the guy who got great goaltending. Again, which is not Spencer Carberry. I'm not saying that.
No. For the record, John Cooper 7th in Jack Adams voting this year. Pete DeBoer 12th. Pete DeBoer specifically got 2 third-place votes.
And there's no votes for Chris Knobloch or Paul Maurice, right?
Who are both in this year's Cup final.
But
kind of funny how that works.
But both teams had lower point totals than they've had in the past. You know, Florida's been the visiting team in all 4 series, I believe, and Edmonton was the visiting team in the first 3 series before someone had to get home ice advantage in this one. So you're like, that's the other thing is you have to remember those votes are cast after the regular season. You don't know what's going to happen in the playoffs. I'm not even. It's the NHL broadcasters, by the way, that vote on this award. Like, I don't have a vote for it. I'm sympathetic because the award comes out 2 months later and they're like, who are these idiots? They didn't even think of the 2 guys in the Cup final. But I was like, you know, anyway.
No, it's important. It's important because, you know, a lot of people just assume that we vote on every single award. But this is one of the few
we might vote like on June 1st instead of April 10th. But a lot of things happen after we vote before they announce the award winners is all I'm saying.
Exactly. I can't wait till all the awards are released and we go through our ballots, if that's something you'd like to do.
I saw there was a spoiler out there.
There is a spoiler out there. Do you want to talk about the spoiler? Do we go in? Yeah, the Hart and the Vezina. Do we go in? I don't know.
No, I mean, I'll just say if you're interested in those types of things, get on your Chat GPT or your Google and you can probably figure it out pretty quickly.
Get on your Chat GPT. Do you use Chat GPT more than Google now?
No, not more, but I use it frequently. I find it really helpful with some things.
I'm not at that point where I'm using Chat GPT. I'd much rather use Google or just do the research myself or something. I don't want to get to that trap where like I use Chat GPT as like a crutch. Like, people are starting to do that now. Like, it's a little scary for me. I'm a little scared. A bit of the direction we're going with that.
I just view it as a tool. I mean, it's not that I'd use it for research. It's like if you needed to compare 2 documents or something, it's like a really effective way you can upload both and it can tell you what's different.
Interesting.
Anyway, like, for example, like I did a new contract recently and you can see what changed the language from one to the other. Like, you know, probably doesn't have good. If that becomes really trustworthy and effective, it's probably not good for lawyers because, you know, by doing that, saved myself a few $100 and it took about 28 seconds. But anyway, yeah, I'm just saying it's a useful tool at really like digesting a large amount of information. If you put the right inputs in, it's less effective, in my opinion, to just say like, how many times has the Stanley Cup final had the same 2 teams in it? Like, you can't necessarily trust the answer. So it's because, right, it's an aggregation of all that's out there. So like there could be bad information going into that aggregation. But I think if you're asking it to analyze very specific things in specific ways, it can be very useful.
we are going to save a long chat on AI and Chat GPT for the summer episodes. I think that could be a really good topic for us.
I will say, though,
not even say that in a bad way. I think it could be really interesting.
I understand the fear, but I think that people that learn how to use it are just going to be more effective. Like, I just think it's there. It's not there to steal our jobs or something. Like, I think some people get nervous with that. It's there to help us do the menial parts of them either quicker or not have to do them at all. So,
summer episode content, CJ. Summer episode content.
Put it this way: I still have to write my own stories, so it's not like I'm not taking shortcuts there. That's my words and my thoughts.
Thank God for that. Let's get to Ask CJ. Let's get to some questions from some real people that sent in questions on X, Blue Sky, Discord, Message in a Bottle, Carry Pigeon. You get it. First one from Tusked Up. Seems Utah is popping up everywhere with the they want to make a big swing. He writes that last part in quotes. Any further insight into what they're going to do this summer?
Well, it's funny because my understanding of what they want to do is they certainly want to be active in free agency in Utah, but I'm not sure it's like the biggest swing. Like, I don't think that they're going to sign the richest contract on free agent day. I mean, it could happen, but my understanding is more they're looking to be smart about how they deploy their resources. But, they recognize that they have some opportunities, I think, particularly to add another forward, but it wouldn't surprise me at all if they're also adding another player on the blue line in the free agent market. But, I don't know that we should, I'm not sure what everyone else is saying, but like my understanding when I've asked around and had discussions is that Utah is more looking to be a player in free agency, but not necessarily the player. And there's a difference because, obviously there's some players out there, and one in particular, that might get just a massive, massive contract. And I don't think that's likely to come from Utah unless maybe it could. I mean, I guess that's the thing is that you go in with a plan. It's like if you've ever gone like Boxing Day shopping or maybe Black Friday shopping. No one does that anymore. Everyone just does it online in their underwear. But,
Cyber
if you like, right. But if I was thinking in the old days, it's like if you went to the mall with a plan to spend $200, but you might spend $400 because there's so many good things to buy. Like, I think that could happen, I guess, in Utah. But my understanding is they're going in kind of thinking, a little bit modestly about what they might do. But, the truth is you don't know what opportunities might come along that could change that thinking. So, I think that there's a lot of good momentum in Utah that they really want to challenge for a playoff spot next year, that, they weren't terribly far off this season. And so they're going to spend some money to try to give their team a level up.
Okay. Next one from Dean Jones. Anything about to pop off for Vegas in terms of trade rumors? Where's Nick Hague going? Do you have any updates on the latest Alex Pietrangelo news?
A lot of moving parts in Vegas, I would say is the best way to put it. And, that team, because they set their aspirations at Stanley Cup every year, it felt some disappointment with the way things ended. Now, you look at who they lost to, and it might end up being the Stanley Cup champions. So I'm not sitting here saying Vegas is way off. But, I think that they will be, mixing things around. I don't have great trade rumors for you. Obviously, Nick Hague's name is one that's out there. And, they've got to get a new deal done for Eichel. So there's some big pieces of business to be done in Vegas, but, that's a team that could be involved in anything and everything. I think that they are not viewing their opportunities as modest. And so don't have a lot of tangible to lay on you, but I think that it's going to be a pretty eventful summer in Vegas. It usually is. And, they've got to get better to have a chance to be playing at this time next year.
Jacob wants to know, when the season is over and you finally have a break, is there a restaurant or a particular meal you cannot wait to have?
Oh, I haven't thought of that one really. I live in Toronto's East End, and I don't get a lot of time, frankly, during the season. Like, I don't dine out in Toronto all that often, or I work a lot of nights, and some nights when I'm not working, I just don't want to leave the house. So, and we get winter weather and all that stuff. Long way of saying, one thing I love when we get to the more relaxed period of the year, which is the summer for me, is like just going on a long walk, finding a restaurant in down the beaches area of Toronto or Queen Street, whatever. So I don't have any like one place I'm looking at. I don't know what's hot and working right now, but I'll definitely find something. I'm not going away until the end of July this year. A short trip at the start of July. But then I'm doing a bigger trip at the end of July. So I'm going to be home for a good 3 weeks or so where I'll be sort of chilling, not working too hard, and maybe I'll share some restaurant recs if I come up with anything worth sharing.
Again, summer episode content. Big Flames guy wants to know if there's anything new on Rasmus Andersson.
Nothing new. I mean, his name's out there. I think that the thing about it is the Flames don't feel that they have to do anything, right? Like I think that they aren't in a position where they feel like this is a decision that has to be made this summer. Obviously they have the ability to extend him officially as of July 1st, and there will be trade interest. And I think you look at it and consider your options and then move forward. But I don't, there's still a bit of, I guess, window left before all that information gathering's done. And then, there's still a world that nothing happens this summer, that he doesn't get extended. He doesn't get traded. He's back in Calgary. And then, there'll be trade rumors during the season. Because, I think ultimately it's not a player that they're going to want to see leave for nothing in return down the line. But it hasn't been decided that he's leaving. There's still maybe a camp to try to sign him. And then, I think if he's going to get traded, they have to be very smart about making that trade and deciding whether it's best to do that this summer or maybe take a look at it at the deadline next year. But who knows? Maybe the team will be in a playoff race or something where that doesn't become palatable. So I still think this one can go in a couple different directions, and it's not entirely clear which is going to be the path just yet.
Do I have time for 2 more questions? How much time I got?
Yeah, you're good, bud.
Mellenby's
Fire
Dead
away.
Rat. Mellenby's Dead Rat asks for you to please explain 35 and over contracts. Could the Panthers use such a contract to pay Brad Marchand a large portion as a performance bonus that wouldn't count against the cap until the 26-27 season when they would have more cap room?
Oh,
it's a lot of math.
No, I'm just trying to think. I just want to make sure I'm giving the correct answer. Yes, they can. So you've seen guys like Corey Perry or some others in recent times. Basically, they'll have bonuses sprinkled through their contract. They can be games played bonuses, like at 20 games, you get this, 30, 40. They can be performance related bonuses, like if the team gets to the playoffs or the first round, you get paid this and that. And all of those bonuses, the accounting for them, the money paid in the bonus itself, not the player's base salary, can be deferred a year on the cap. And so the Panthers could conceivably do that. And I don't know the exact limitations, if any, on how, like, what percentage has to be paid in the bonus versus whatever. But it is a way to defer the pain, call it. And it's not that it's pain. It's just you're trying to be smart about, what you want to do with those contracts. And so, yeah, that's something they could do. Now, I believe they would have to sign them to a 1-year deal to do it. That's probably more of the fly in the ointment is, at this stage, I think Brad Marchand's looking at a 3 to 4 year contract, and I think he's going to have a lot of bidders that are willing to do that. So, I'm not saying his time in Florida is definitely up. I just think that there's going to be, they have other priorities. I mean, Sam Bennett's younger by a fair bit and having a great playoffs and is part of the culture. Aaron Ekblad, as he said to our colleague Michael Russo, I've given my body to the Florida Panthers, but he's been with the team a long, long time. And there's other players too. I don't know if they're going to be able to make, even with the kind of contract you're saying. I think it's not likely they keep Marchand, but the door isn't closed. It's not like he doesn't love it there. It's just, it really is going to come down to just, unfortunately, cold hard business, I think. he's at a stage where he's looking to still make pretty good money. And I think the market is going to have it out there for him, and probably on guaranteed contracts that are lasting 3 years or 4 years. That's what I'd be looking for if I was you.
Last question for you, CJ, from 5 Second Pose. What was the weirdest time you were sent information?
Ooh. Funny, my brain. What do you think? Like, how am I supposed to answer that?
So, like, you might be, I would think a weirder time than, like, you going out on a run and then you get information. Like, you might be out at dinner. You might be in the bathroom. I don't know. You tell me. It
happens so frequently, though, when it's not ideal, that I can't even think of, like, what's the weirdest. Like, it's like there's just always something going on when you're at, a family dinner or at, like it's a lifestyle is what I'd say. And things don't happen on a 9 to 5 schedule. It's a 24-hour world. And so, yeah, I don't have like one time. I don't have like this greatest story ever on this, but I will say it's rarely convenient. Put it that way. You're rarely like sitting at your computer. I'm like, the workday's just beginning. I had a great sleep. I've got a fresh mind. Now I'm going to I got this big story to work on. It's often when you're in the middle of 12 things at once. It's just Murphy's Law.
I was about to say, like, there have been other insiders who have tackled a similar question, and
I'm not saying that. I know what you're winking at there, and that's
not to say. I'm very glad. I'm glad you didn't go that route. That's all I'm going to say about that. Oh man!
I still can't believe that guy said that. Anyway,
I mean, either. I was just like, "Oh, is he going to get to that point?" Thank God you didn't go there.
If you don't know what we're talking about, get ChatGPT on it. You'll figure it out.
It's out there on the internet. CJ, great work as always, my man. Thank you to everyone who sent in questions for Ask CJ. Again, be sure to check out CJ's work on The Athletic as the Stanley Cup final continues. We'll be back later this week with a brand new episode of The Chris Johnston Show. Great work as always, again, and enjoy the Florida sun, my man.
Thank you. It's going to be epic Game 3, and I guess we record again before Game 4. These games are happening at glacial speed now, so...
Yeah, we went through a Saturday night where there was no Cup final game and no NBA Finals game. Like, that doesn't happen. But I just thought that was very strange.
Yeah, the reason we're having the extra off day in this series like that's coming up, I believe, is due to the NBA Finals scheduling. But you might be able to tell me better when they play again. But I think there would have been, because normally, so today's Monday, normally we would have played it again Wednesday, like the way the scheduling typically works. But is there an NBA Finals game that night? Do you know?
So the NBA Finals are playing again Wednesday and Friday. So they had a massive gap between 1 and 2, but that gap has been shortened for games 3 and 4 in Indiana.
There you go. And so that affected the pacing of this series. So then obviously we go Thursday and then Saturday back at Edmonton. I'm going to go back to Edmonton and be there for like 12 minutes. I think, assuming my planes work correctly, I think I land at like 11:50 p.m. on Friday night, and then the game is Saturday, and then I would just fly straight back here Sunday.
Jeez, man. To have your schedule.
No,
get some rest in between.
Everybody.
Still,
some people are on the NHL charter, you're not doing the whole connection game, and the day is cut in half in terms of the time, but most people aren't. So...
Hey, well, I care about Chris Johnston. This is not the Michael Russo show. This is the Chris Johnston show.
Well, it's like family of the players. It's everybody, right? Like everybody's in the same kind of ball game. Now, to be fair, usually when it gets to a point where one team can win, the teams start chartering the families around too. So the families will get off the Air Canada like rigmarole soon here. But I remain on the hamster wheel.
And we appreciate your work on said hamster wheel. Thanks, guys.
The Chris Johnston Show. Follow Chris on Twitter @ReporterChris and follow Julian @JKA McKenzie.
The Chris Johnston Show.